Good morning. Man, it's storming here. I don't know how it is where you are, but man, there's a huge big old thunderstorm coming through. So far the electricity's on, so we just well go for it, right? I got my umbrella. I thought maybe I should take that umbrella down. I don't know. Maybe it'll be okay. I mean, I had closed it, you know. Okay, go ahead. So I stepped out the patio door and picked it up and laid it down real fast. Came back in, and I mean, I got my coffee, sat back down in the recliner because I love watching the storms come in out of the bay windows there. And I mean, no sooner did I sat down with my coffee and this wind goes whoosh, and I'm like, well, I'm glad I listened to that instinct, to that thought, right? Isn't every day made up by a series of thoughts and reactions, right? And some days we get those thoughts and we blow them off, and then later we go, I had that thought. Sometimes we have those thoughts and we go for them, and it wasn't the thing to do. Maybe it wouldn't have stormed at all if I hadn't taken the umbrella down, right? And we just never know what's going to happen in a day. And that's good or bad. It's not a negative statement. There can be some really good things happen in a day. There can be some really bad things happen in a day. A lot of how your day goes, my day goes, has to do with our perspectives. And that's what I want to talk about this morning. So I'm still in Nehemiah. Hopefully I'll finish the book tomorrow. But what I'm doing is I'm reading. When something catches my attention, I'm just camping there. I go look at the other scriptures it's referencing. That's what I spent my time doing this morning. I'll work through it. I'll sit and meditate on it. I'll pull one out, like the joy of the Lord is my strength. What does that even mean? Meditating on that scripture, does that mean that when God gives me joy, I have strength? That's Nehemiah 8:10, by the way. Or does it mean when I give God joy, that gives me strength? Oh, something to think about. So then you meditate on that, right? When something catches your attention like that. So that's what I've been doing through Nehemiah. I think I've been reading it most of this week. But this morning I was reading. The people are confessing their sins. They've rebuilt the temple, and they're reinstituted things like the tithe so that the priests can live in the temple, and take care of the temple. They focused a lot on get the temple back up like it's supposed to be and take care of it. And if we can draw a spiritual parallel to that, it would be the same as our spiritual temple, which we are the temple of God now. We don't have a physical temple where God dwells. We are God's dwelling place. It also says in Psalms, how lovely is his dwelling place, or how lovely are the dwelling places, right? And that's us. Now in the New Testament, we are. So how much effort should we put in keeping ourselves pure, keeping out the things, thinking on things that are lovely, good, of good report, things like that, and upkeeping our spiritual being, feed it the Word, spend time in prayer, meditate on the Word. That's taking care of the temple now, right? To keep it pure, to keep it operating right, to keep us focused on God, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit this morning as I get on into it. So I made it to chapter 9 today, though. Aren't you proud? It should be, because and actually I think I made it further, but I kind of camped in chapter 9 because in chapter 9 they're reiterating what has happened. They're talking about Abraham and how God called Abraham. They're going back to the foundation of faith, although they didn't call it that way in the Old Testament, right? They're going back to the foundation of faith, and they're looking at Abraham's story, and how God touched Abraham. And then they talk about Moses and how the children of Israel came out of bondage, right? And how God went and got his people and pulled them out. It was a wonderful thing. And then it comes across in verse 17. It says, but they refused to listen. The children God rescued out of bondage, 400 years of bondage, refused to listen and did not remember the miracles you had done for them. Instead, they rebelled and appointed a leader to take them back to their slavery in Egypt. What? Yeah, I looked it up. We're going to look at it in a second. Then it says, but you are a God of forgiveness, gracious and merciful, slow to become angry, and full of unfailing love and mercy. You did not abandon them. It's a good thing God's God and I'm not, because I'm God. You know what? Just do what you want to do then, right? And so even when they abandoned God, it goes on in this chapter 9 of Nehemiah to say he didn't withhold manna. They were acting a fool out there in the middle of the wilderness, and he didn't go. And he was feeding them. He was sustaining them. He was making sure they had water. He was caring for them. Their clothes didn't wear out. I guess their shoes just grew with them because they didn't have time to stop and make shoes. He was totally taking care of their body, soul, and spirit. And he could have just said, "No more manna for you." That's it, man. That's it. I ain't giving you no. You just act that way. Just act that way. I'm not you. But God's not that way. He said, "I'm still your provider. You can be as foolish as you want. You can be as pure, plain old dumb as you want, as stupid as you want. You can do stupid things, and I'm still gonna take care of you if you'll let me." And that just blew my mind as I was reading that this morning. So, but this phrase that said they wanted to elect a leader to take them back to Egypt, I thought, okay, I'm going to go look at that scripture. So I did, because it's all right here in the Bible, right? It's real easy. I didn't have to go very far. It was over in Numbers. Numbers 14. It says it said they raised their voices in a great chorus of complaint against Moses, and they said, "We wish we had died in Egypt." And we laugh at that, but sometimes we feel it, right? Wish we had died in Egypt, where they're even here in the wilderness, or even here in the wilderness, they're like, it's better to just be dead. They wailed, it said. Some sad stuff, right? Why is the Lord taking us to this country only to have us die in battle? We're all going to die. We should have just been in Egypt. And they said they plotted among themselves, let's choose a leader and go back to Egypt. This wasn't the first time they had brought it up. What happened to put them in this mood? Well, Joshua had just sent in the 12 spies, and they had come back. And eight of the 10 spies, yeah, eight of those spies said, "There's giants in the land. We'll never be able to overtake it. We'll never be able to win. They're bigger than we are. They're meaner than we are. They have fortified cities, and we'll never be able to penetrate their fortresses." And two of the spies, Joshua and Caleb, came back and said, "Look at this fruit, man. Have you ever seen grapes like this before? Look at this land of abundance." Now, they were all in the same land. All 12 spies, all 10 spies, 10 spies, 12 spies, all the spies were in the same land, right? All of them saw the same stuff. But the majority focused on what they couldn't do, or what they thought they couldn't do. So they weren't thinking about God, because it didn't matter. God said, "Go take the land." Remember that story about the boat we talk about a lot? And God said, "Go to the other side." The storm didn't stop them from going to the other side, but they had to go through the storm to get to the other side, right? And now God's saying, "Go take the land." It doesn't mean there's not going to be challenges. It doesn't mean there's not going to be difficulties. It doesn't mean that you're just going to walk in and everybody's going to fall over dead and go, "Oh, it's ours now. We got it by default," right? It's not that easy, but you got to focus on the right stuff. So the 80% of the spies were like, "This is horrible. We'll never be able to do anything. We're not going to be able to take the land." And two spies, Joshua and Caleb, and they got so mad at Caleb. They wanted to kill him for bringing a good report. And then they're like, "Just elect somebody else and let's go back to Egypt." Doesn't that sound crazy? But isn't that what we do so many times? It would be easier to go back to a place where we know what to expect. They forgot how bad slavery was. They forgot how bad the bondage was. They forgot how they were crying in the first part of Exodus because the burden was so heavy, and then because they were thinking about trying to escape and Moses was talking to Pharaoh, they made it harder on them. And they were moaning and wailing and crying there. And now God's brought them out with a great display of power and a great display of his just his presence and his can-do-ness, right? That's a new word. You can just coin that for me. And of what he could do, and possibility and promise. And now they're going, "We'd rather just die as slaves in Egypt." What? Don't we do that though? We'd rather have the hard part that's easy for us. We can accept slavery because we don't have to think about it. But when we're looking at a battle and we're looking at going in what God promised us, we got to think a little bit. We got to listen to him. We got to obey him. We got to find out what this word says here and apply it. And maybe it's something that's as seemingly as simple as, "I'm giving you my peace now. You got to let it rain." But it's easier to go into the storm because then I know what to expect. I know there's going to be thunder and lightning. When I start trusting God for peace, I'm a little more off-centered here, and I'm not sure because I'm so used to my anxieties, and I'm speaking for myself, nobody else. So you can just turn it off because that's just me. Yeah, I'm so used to my anxieties that the peace sounds weird. I'm so used to my problems, to slavery, to being bondage, somebody thinking for me, somebody telling me things, what to think, what to do, that being able to choose, okay, let's just trust God for this, is foreign. Because, and so many times we choose emotional slavery because peace costs too much, because we don't know what to expect. Peace doesn't really cost that much, but it does cost us to lay down what we're feeling at the moment and accept it and let it rain, right? And so here we go. But here's the thing, the perspective was the two things that stood out in this story for me this morning. One was the perspective. Two of them were like, look at, they all saw the same land, and about 20%, give or take, said, it's got some good stuff, let's go get it. And about 85% said, oh, there's giants. They were looking at totally different things in the same land. What are you looking at today? I have to ask myself, what am I looking at? What am I focusing on? Because if I focus on the giants, I'm going to be shaking in my boots. But if I focus on the fruit and the good things of God, then those giants are irrelevant, because God's going to take care of them anyway, right? They're totally unrelated to what he wants to do in my life, except he's going to display his power. That's one thing, is perspective. What are we looking at? And the other thing that just stood out to me was here in back in Nehemiah 9, where it talks about God didn't withhold manna. He didn't withhold his provision. He didn't withhold his peace. He didn't take back his promise. He didn't go, you know what, y'all knucklehead, y'all a bunch of knuckleheads, just forget it. What are you going to do with the wilderness if you're not going to rely on me? He didn't get angry. He just mercifully accepted them every time they came back to him. And they did keep coming back. They just had a lot to work through, like you and I do so many times. Maybe it's just me, right? But he didn't withhold the manna or his provision. He didn't change his promise. As silly as they got, as faithless as they were, as scared as they were of the giants without seeing the promise of God, he didn't say, oh, just forget it. He didn't get tired of them. I got tired of them in Exodus, right? But he didn't get tired of them. And he doesn't get tired of us. He doesn't get tired of us coming to him every day and giving him all those anxieties. And sometimes it's every hour, and sometimes it's, for me, it's every minute, and sometimes it's every second, right? He doesn't say, oh, she is again. No, he doesn't say, are you ever going to get this? No, he just says, look at the fruit of trusting me. I'll take care of the giants, right? But we got that moment in there where we see the giants and the fruit, and we got to choose. Like Peter maybe sitting on the side of that boat going, Jesus said, come, do I get out on this water in the storm? He could have said, oh no, it's, you come on over here first. I'll get out in a minute, right? He had that moment of, am I going to trust Jesus, or am I going to fear the storm? Am I going to trust that God's given me good stuff and got a good future and a good hope for me and given me peace? Or am I going to look at the giants in the land? There's always going to be giants in the land. But there's always going to be good fruit in trusting God, right? So it's about our perspective. So I encourage you today to change your perspective if you need to. Maybe you've already got it all together. I don't. I'm going to change my perspective today. And instead of looking at the challenges as giants that I can't overcome, I'm going to look at the fruit that comes from trusting God. I'm going to look at the provision and the promises of God, because there's so many promises in here about his peace, about hope, about everything we could even imagine, right? God's got us. What are you looking at today? Take your eyes off the giant. Look at God. Trust him, and peace out. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.